Welcome to the Lovecars On The Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars On The Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. What am I saying? Let's start again. Sorry, Phil. Sorry, Tiff. Welcome to Lovecars On The Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. This week, Toyota's ruled the world with a 1-2 in WEC and WRC. There was wild IndyCar finale at Laguna Seca. Big ups with NASCAR, and it's all to play off with the playoffs in America, of course. MotoGP was a bit of a procession. 2 wins for Razgatalogu. Did I get that right, Tiff?
Close, I think, yeah.
World Superbike. And back home in the UK, there was a win for BMW brands for the British Grand GT. And Tiff, 2 finishes out of 3 at glorious Goodwood, but we'll come on to that right at the very end. Going to start off with a little bit of news. What have you got, Tiff? Anything this week?
No, I was so busy at Goodwood for 4 days. Cricket on the Thursday, qualifying. Yeah, it's busy, Goodwood. I've really not got no news at all.
Well, I don't either, other than the Felipe.
The massive case.
I did this silly 3 Peaks thing over the weekend. For those of you that wished me well, thank you, and for those of you that tuned in last week, and I'm knackered. Don't ever do it. No, it's stick to driving. Felipe Massa in the news because his lawyers have reached out to Lewis Hamilton. Lewis, you're adorned in Brazil. Do the right thing. Give up your world championship. Just 2 silly words.
He lost one in Abu Dhabi. He doesn't want to lose another one in Brazil, does he?
Absolutely. So let's kick off with Toyotas with World Endurance and World.
Yeah, I mean, it all happened, of course, overnight in Japan. So you never get to watch it live.
I know,
good, but it's a shame we don't watch it. Of course, watching a 6-hour race on telly, you've got to be a real addict to sit and watch or download on wherever it might have been shown. But it's it's just great to follow and to watch whenever you can these amazing new hybrid machines. Toyota very much back on top, first and second on the grid, but they didn't lead all the way. The funny thing was Ferrari is still down a bit because after they won Le Mans, they hit them a bit with the balance of power, which this whole sports car thing is going to live with for the rest of its life.
And is that the right thing, Tiff? The balance of power?
I think it has to be. Otherwise, someone will spend more and more billions and they'll create a car that nobody can beat. And the other manufacturers won't be interested. So unless you give the manufacturers a bit of an occasional weekend in the sun by changing the balance of power, they're not going to spend billions of pounds on it.
But then why Ferrari? Le Mans was May, June, whenever it was, several months ago, and Toyota have been ruling the roost since. So surely that isn't quite right.
They were quite close at Monza, Ferrari, but apparently Ferrari today, I've read that, have said we looked close at Monza, but we were the same apart as we were in Fuji. Because of course they only change it once, and I think you have to wait 3 or 4 races before you get another change. So you're sort of stuck with what you've got. So they shrugged their shoulders and apparently said it's what we expected, in my best Italian accent. Because Monza we looked closer, I think, because the pace car brought them nearer. But they qualified 6th and 7th. And it was Porsche, of course, who got their LMDH, which runs the American regulations, which is a choice of 4 different chassis and everybody using the same gearbox and regenerating power plant. So, Porsche's qualified 3rd and 4th. Although one dropped out early, they led for about 4 of the 6 hours. Well, there's one, in fact, the Penske Porsches, of course, Roger Penske runs the factory cars. But they also, which I love about LMDHs, is, there were 2 customer Porsches, like the good old days of the 962s Group C when you could buy a race-winning car. So the Jota car and the Proton car. In fact, the Jota car finished 4th, I think, in the end. Yes, Ferrari 4th and 5th. Finished 3rd. That's the Penske Porsche. Jotas were further down. See, that's always when they sell Porsches, you get confused which Porsche finished where. So Porsche was 3rd. The Proton Porsche was running high up. That a bizarre pit stop disaster. The seatbelt pulled out of its adjustment buckle. And of course, those buckles, you couldn't thread it back in. So I had to go to the garage and put a whole new set of seatbelts in. I've never heard of that before.
Wow, that's unlucky.
But so, the one Penske Porsche was 3rd. 4th and 5th, the Ferraris just ran around, they were a lap down at the end. And it's what we expected, according to them. A bit disappointed with Italian fans. The Cadillac was quick. Cadillac qualified fifth behind the Porsche, the other LMDH entry that qualified ahead of the Ferraris. But they had a lot of problems. Finished 10th of the 10 hypercars. Actually, 11 hypercars. The Van Wall was over there, but it finished about 28th or somewhere. So it's sorry. I mean, the fact that Porsche led, apparently, was a good race because there's a lot of chasing, a bit of overtaking stuff. The Porsches had to come back at them. Mike Conway was in the leading team, the Brit Mike Conway. So congratulations to him. Interesting people you forget about. Robert Kubica won the LMP2 class. So people like Robert, you think, oh, they've disappeared forever. He's not racing anymore.
He was quick, wasn't he? He was never my cup of tea. Never my favourite. He was quick at times.
Enjoying his racing. Ferrari won the GT class. So I'm sure the Japanese fans had a wonderful weekend, and Toyota were all happily winning. I think it's about one round to go, I think. And I think at the moment Mike Conway's in the second place in the Drivers' Championship with the other Porsche.
Those cars look as good as they've ever looked over the years. Beautiful looking cars. I like very sad about not sad, just disappointed about the seatbelt situation. 20 odd years ago, I remember Petter Solberg. I can't remember his rally driver in the Subaru. His co-driver, his navigator, but the steering wheel came loose, and he had to undo his driving along. They slowed right down to sort of 30 or 40. Had to lean over into the back, get a spanner, and do the steering wheel up whilst he's driving along. I should remember the navigator's name. And then they went off and they finished second in that stage. But you imagine nowadays all the rules and regulations of taking your seatbelt off whilst you're driving. But that's bad luck. What about in WRC then? Toyota's still ruling the rules with WRC.
Another one too. I mean, what a day for PR in Japan. Of course, I mean the Toyota have been ruling the roost in rallying for the last 2 years, so that's nothing new really. A Toyota domination. Well, it was quite an exciting race. Sebastian Ogier was back again with Toyota for one of his occasional appearances, and in the middle of the rally, it was a great three-way battle going on between Ogier and with always forget Thierry Neuville in the Hyundai, and Thierry was leading for quite a while. Hyundai. And Kalle Rovanperä, the championship leader, was of course first on the road. They had this terrible rain. They cancelled the shakedown test in Greece, so the conditions weren't normal. Acropolis, as it's known as to the real fans. So Kalle Rovanperä was first on the road. So he was a sort of slightly subdued third, but of course he started coming forwards on Saturday and Sunday when he was starting further back on the lineup. But in the end, Ogier hit a pothole under a puddle and damaged his Toyota too much. I think the same sort of thing happened to Thierry Neuville. He was out in the leading Hyundai. And so it was Elfyn Evans that cruised through to second place behind Kalle for that 1-2 victory. And it's sort of, it looks like Rovanperä will win the championship again. So it was close on the Saturday, but it all fell apart a bit with the tough conditions. It was a rough conditions, which is what the Acropolis should be. So we don't mind a bit of mechanical carnage. Gus Greensmith, shout out to the Brit. He finished second in the WRC2, 8th overall, only a few seconds behind Andreas Mikkelsen in a Skoda 1-2. And I will say Skoda 1-2. I will not say no. However many of those adverts I hear on radio, I will never ever say Skoda, and that's it. Am I going to start saying we're going to Paris this weekend?
No, I agree.
You pronounce it with your home accent. You don't suddenly force people to adopt a ridiculous Skoda.
Because you're Porsche, as am I, but someone like Richard Hammond is very much Porsche.
I'm a Porsche. I was a Porsche Cars Great Britain driver in 1989 when we raced at Le Mans. So I had to pronounce it.
Yeah,
it is Porsche.
I get that.
That's the English. Well, that's Porsche Cars Great Britain. It said Porsche.
But it's also München, not Munich. It's just the English pronunciation, isn't it? But anyway,
sounds awful. Those radio adverts, they're really stressing it, aren't they? There's the lady, the voice, Skoda. No,
Skoda and Hyundai.
It's a Skoda.
Okay.
So it's great. I mean, Gus, it's funny, isn't it? He was at the back of the grid, but he had a Ford in WRC when he had 3 or 4 seasons, didn't he? And he was sort of, he's just a renter driver and he's not quite as quick as the top. But the gap between the brilliant, which happens in Formula One, and the very good, like Gus, it's tiny, really. And so he's done a great job in WRC too. And of course, Mikkelsen was another one that had a top-class car. There's just not enough top-class cars for all this talent to compete in. 8 WRC cars. So rallying a bit of worry. There we go.
Yeah, but we've been worried for rallying for quite some time on this show.
Yes, indeed.
What is the future of rallying? Right, IndyCar, because this was just crazy. I've never seen so many.
Did you watch some of it?
No, I watched some of it because it was on 10, 11 last night.
Oh, wow.
I've never seen so many yellow flags. I think even the pace car had to fill up with fuel, had to be refueled, which is just so bizarre.
Well, I don't know why it made it work, because they'd resurfaced it. Everyone was sort of a bit shocked with the speed and the grip. You know, they worried whether the softer tyres would last long. They didn't last very long in the end. They were better off on the black tyres, the basic tyre. But yeah, it just all kicked off at turn one. You know, there's 27 cars. It's a big field, you know, channeling down into a long, late apex, loopy, sort of left-handed hairpin. And the worst story about all the people that crashed was the poor old Yuri Vips. So it's Estonian he had a test with the Rahal team, and poor old Jack Harvey lost his drive a few rounds ago because he's had a bad season. So Rahal are trying out young drivers, and Yuri managed to get this. He had a good test because he crashed with Graham Rahal. Rahal, I think, thought it was Yuri's fault at first. It wasn't. It was not Magnus. Marcus Armstrong was sort of between. Anyway. But Yuri done such good, qualified 13th in his second ever IndyCar. And this is why I like IndyCar, because you can get these stories of these drivers that were brilliant in Formula 2 that didn't quite get the pull. And funny enough, it was, you know, again, you can't defend these people. But poor old Yuri was a Red Bull junior, winning Formula 2 races, done some Red Bull testing, right on the ladder to Formula 1, when he used the dreaded N-word in it was a Twitter live stream. You know what one of those is? No, Twitch live stream.
Which is the same, yeah.
So somehow he used that word. And then, you know, Red Bull dropped him. They tried to help him behind the scenes. Well, they helped pay for his psychoanalysis, I think. And he raced a bit more Formula 2 in an unsponsored car. But it slightly brings me to this, you know, at my age, I get worried about what I'm about to say to my kids in there, you know, because there are so many things we've said in the past that were just what we said and joked about, jokes that were so simple and now are twisted into the famous, you know, tooth hurty joke, which you can't say. But bizarrely, the one bit in the news this week was that Helmut Marko has had to apologise, go down on bended knee, because he used a racial stereotype. Now, hold on, Red Bull. You dumped Yuri Vips because on some bloody game he used the word that he shouldn't. And yet, hold on, you've called South Americans, they're not as focused, completely focused as Max and Seb, because that's what South Americans are like. It's their stereotype. It's the nationality to blame. Well, hold on a minute. And he's got to fire himself. Why is there no big fuss and furore about that? The funniest thing about it, of course, is that Mexico, this whole thing was relating to why Perez doesn't always qualify so well, because it's South American problem. But of course, Mexico don't like to think they're in South America. They like to think but they are. They are in North America.
Well, as the continent goes, they are, but it's Central America, effectively. But
anyway, he used the word South Americans. So he said Perez, his problem in qualifying is the South American racial stereotype of not being able to focus properly.
Ridiculous. But the world
he must resign.
The world has gone mad. Just chill out.
So anyway,
what people say.
So poor old Yuri got taken out, which is such a shame. And hopefully he'll get an IndyCar ride next year. He's looked quick and he hadn't been to that track before, so great stuff. And then the stories just went on through us. Just after the first corner, I think Herta hit Dixon and Dixon hit Renus VK, and they were all. There were so many cars off of the gravel at turn one. The stewards didn't seem to think that Herta had hit Dixon and that Dixon just fishtailed, which it could have happened. It was very hard to see. So Dixon got a drive-through penalty. Every time causing an incident, you get drive-through penalty, which is quite good, I think, if you cause it. We talked about, didn't we, earlier about those clashes at Monza where you get a 5-second penalty.
It's just nothing. It's not deterrent.
No. Yeah. So you get the drive. So that's Dixon out of the race, isn't it? Isn't it?
No.
Not with Dixon. So he did another of the team. He saved fuel. And of course, he ended up winning the race. You know, having. I mean, it was just chaos because there were so many yellows. I couldn't really map who went where and who finished where in the end, apart from Dixon winning. But one of the craziest things was they had the restart, and I don't actually know. And I tried to look this morning on the regulations. So please, Americans or anyone knows IndyCar rules of how they do their restarts. Now, it appears to be almost that the organizer in your ear goes green, green, green. And it's a sort of it's always on the same part of the circuit. But for some reason, they got that on the entry to the tight hairpin bend before the start-finish straight. So I would have thought go around the tight bend as per the original start and green, green, green. But no.
Surely it's not.
Green,
surely
green,
it's on the lead driver, and he went then.
Well, no. Well, then it shouldn't be, because they were all the number of yellow causes yellow, as they always say, was this hairpin every time someone would.
If you're the lead driver and it's clear for you, you want to gun it and make them all fight each other behind. Surely.
But they're all dive bombing into this hairpin.
I've never led a safety car. I've only had one safety car.
About 3 times, it just caused another yellow. So, I mean, just ridiculous to have a restart into a hairpin when everyone's going mental. I've made lots of notes about it. There's just so many stories going on about great stuff going on. The good news was Marcus Armstrong, despite that clash earlier on, he finished 8th and became Rookie of the Year. So good for the Kiwi. He was pretty chuffed afterwards. And Callum Ilott finally. I mean, Callum is the best. If you haven't looked at it, if anyone's got a recording of Callum Ilott's interview, put it on Twitter or put it on the internet. Because they said, just had 5th, your best ever result. And he always jokes and laughs. He says, I've no idea how we got there. I thought I was running last. And then he actually spun into the pit lane. And look, he spun into the pit lane and caused a bit of confusion and blocked the pit lane. So he managed to spin into the pit lane at some stage. But just by coming out at the right time when the yellows, the wrong time with the yellows, he had his best. He had 5th. He's a wonderful guy to be interviewed. And he's racing for this Juncos Hollinger team. And there's another wonderful story. So I love IndyCar because Juncos is Argentinian, who runs this Argentinian American team called Juncos Hollinger, who Ilott drives for. So he had this Argentinian friend, this Argentinian superhero, Agustin Canapino. He's won about 28 national stock cars, supercars, saloon car events. He's 33 years old, complete hero in Argentina. In fact, he recently won the Sports Personality of the Year award.
Say his name again.
Agustin Canapino. Now, he also was voted Sports Personality of the Year, which the only other racing driver to win that in Argentina is Juan Manuel Fangio. So that's a pretty good Canapino Fangio. And apparently last year, Juncos got him a drive in the Daytona 24 Hours. So yeah, Cameron America did that. And then they thought, well, let's take an IndyCar down to Argentina because it's an Argentinian team, so he wanted to show off his young. So they gave Canapino a little test at the end of last year at Sebring, so just get him used to the car. And they thought, he never raced a single-seater, right? Never raced a single-seater. This is what I love, talent. If talent's there,
yeah, I agree.
If it's given the opportunity. So he was so impressive with this Sebring test. They said, well, why don't you do a year's IndyCar? So he's done this season. He's had some 12th and 8th and had some good runs. But halfway through this race, and his strategy got him up to 4th or 5th. But he was overtaking the superstars in the top team cars, running 3rd at one stage before he went back in the field because the tactics all went wrong and had the wrong tyres. And never raced around the tracks all season. New track to him, G-force. He said it's a bit G-force.
He's 33.
And it's just all these kids. Who is it says they're giving up the single seaters because he's 27? Oh yes, and Palau said that one of the reasons why he says he's quit the McLaren contract is I think it was all due to Piastri taking that seat because he thought he'd get that. And I think when Piastri did so well, Palau's realised, well, he's virtually, I'm 25 now or something, 26, I think he's 25. And if I don't get a next year, I'll be 27 or something. And a nobly employed 27-year-old debutant in Grand Prix racing, which is a terrible, terrible thing to have to say. They were so obsessed with youth. And this Canapino boy, 33 years old, national hero. Apparently he went home recently, he was mobbed. I mean, it's just wonderful stories. At IndyCar.
Everybody loves an underdog, don't they? That's a proper Rocky story. If only
I suppose we've got Albon at the end. We've got an underdog. We occasionally have a Haas underdog in Formula One. Doing Magnus on pole in Brazil, and Alexander Albon's doing a bit of underdogging.
But that was just because of the weather. That wasn't it. It's still lovely to see. Oh, brilliant! I like those sort of stories. More of those, please.
Then NASCAR, the other American thing, not the best of tracks. Kansas, pretty drawn out race, a lot of tire.
So what's happening with the playoffs? Where are we with that first before you go into?
So now this was the second of the 3 rounds. Each is 3 rounds before it goes down from 16 to 12. So 4 go out, and if a winner, you jump straight through. So of the 16 drivers that were there, Tyler Reddick won in a really brilliant, exciting. We had a 2-lap dash because Denny Hamlin was cruising away with a win, looked easy. Kyle Larson had led the most laps. Again, you can lose the plot. They left him out a bit too long, a set of tyres, thinking they could make that work, and it didn't. So he ended up back in the pack and finished about 5th or 6th in the end. But yeah, there was a yellow came out. Poor Denny Hamlin. It's happened to so many drivers. It must drive them mad. You're just cruising to win with a 6-second lead or something. Then everyone has to change tyres. Anyway, so Tyler Reddick goes straight through. But the ones that dropping downers, the snakes and ladders, was poor old Martin Truex Jr., one of the stars. His car wasn't very good from the word go, had a slow puncture, slammed the wall, he's out of the race. So you lose. It's like the number in the race. So it's 38 people in the race. So you scored 38 points or whatever it is. I never quite know it. Something like that. The points are per place. So he's out of the top 12. And so is Bubba Wallace, who also hit the wall when he had a tyre puncture. So it was a bit about tyres. Luck of the draw with tyres at Kansas, very fast track. So they're 13th and 14th, big names to be down there. 1 round to go. Joey Logano, a former champion, and Kevin Harvick, they're 11th and 12th. And they're all heading off to this Bristol half-mile crazy, there will be banging and bumping fest to see who can get through to the last 12.
You
So
don't
not the
need
most
to win
exciting
one,
race.
and then you're through by default.
Well, if you're a winner, you jump through. So, but the same guy might win all 3 and stop the winners. So otherwise, just on points. And you're all the whole thing is below and above the cut line. So literally during this Bristol race, I have no doubt that Truex will get up to 11th and Logano will be 16th, and then they'll have a pit stop, and then it'll all swap down. Literally, the whole race, the tension is who's above and below. And I think above the cut line, it's about 4 drivers, almost exactly the same point. So it's,
super tight.
There's a lot of tension with the way they run their playoffs. It's clever stuff. I like it. It's entertaining. So, and it means only 4 people can win the championship at the end, because only 4 make the final, and then the leading man in the 4 is the champion. But they do still have a points champion. So they have the regular season champion, and if that's what you prefer as your motorsport, then he is. But they also have the playoff champion. So it's entertaining. Unlike, dare we say this, unlike.
For once, it normally is very exciting as in MotoGP, but
it's getting less and less so. Don't you remember the last race when Aprilia?
Yeah, you're right.
Had the they were the Red Bull of that race, and this time it was back to Ducati again.
But we don't need. It's just getting so complicated now, as we've mentioned many times.
Because they're getting Formula One style aero in, and I don't know whether Misano's a particularly bad track. Maybe I think Aprilia having won at Barcelona, wasn't it? They said before they went, it won't be the same at Misano because that doesn't suit our bike. So there are bikes that are quick in a straight line, bikes are quick around slow corners because they're set up, or bikes that are quick round. Anyway, I mean, the Moto3 again was the only real race. I mean, a fabulous race to the finish. Three kids all going for glory, and this Colombian sensation, his name I forgot last year. 2 of our listeners gave different answers, and one was right and one was wrong. Anyway, it's David Alonso, probably David Alonso. I'm not sure. What language is Colombia? Spanish or Portuguese?
Spanish.
So how would you say David in Spanish?
Davide, I would say. That's Italian. Alonso. I don't know.
So he went from 3rd to 1st on the last lap. I mean, just these 3 of them were just side by side for most of the last lap. Stunning. 17-year-old. He's got this childish smile. So he's instantly become the next Pedro Acosta, because we all love the Pedro Acosta, this kid that was Moto3 superstar 2 years ago. So we got a new kid on the block. Pedro Acosta won the Moto2 race, cruised it, dull, 6 seconds ahead of anyone else. The Italian Celeste Vietti was 2nd. At least the Italians had something to share about. He was on pole, actually, Vietti. Sam Lowe's qualified 8th and ended up on his bottom again. Jake Dixon was on his bottom in qualifying, I think, and he only qualified 14th and got as far as 12th. And Jake's a man that, was in the old days, and now he starts in the front and stays at the front, but he always used to drop back early on and then keep his tyres and come through the pack. But he got from 14th to 12th. So very disappointing. Their MotoGP qualified in the order Jorge Martin from Marco Bezzecchi from Bagnaia. Bagnaia coming back from that awful crash when the KTM rode over his legs, which was lucky, didn't damage him. So he's pretty impressive to come back a week after a bad shunt.
It's incredible.
Anyway, so that's the order they started, and guess what order they finished in? Yeah, same order. Martin on the Pramac Ducati, Bezzecchi on the VR46, that's the local team there, Valentino Rossi's local circuit, Bazzano, so lots of yellow farm. In fact, the start of the race, it was like a fog. The riders could hardly see where they're going, so much yellow smoke got off for Rossi. And then you look at this problem with MotoGP. So former world champions, the most talented rider, Marc Marquez on his Honda, 11th. The brilliant Frenchman and Formula champion, Fabio Quartararo on his Yamaha, 13th. And it's just...
something not quite right, is there?
Well, either the Italians have to give up their amazing contraptions. I was speaking to some of the biker boys, at Goodwood, because there were bike races as well. And they say that the start, you see the bike drops.
It does.
Front and rear, but not a little. But it's about 4 inches. It's like they're like a dragster bike, and they go full throttle, lie on the tank, and they just catapult like a drag bike. And then they use all these buttons, and they change the ride up, jack it up. So either the Italians and KTM that have spent all this money agree to dropping some of this type tech, or the Japanese have to spend a lot of money to try and catch up. And that's where I think all the Japanese bosses are scratching their heads back in Japan, thinking, well, Honda in particular want their race bikes to be very similar to their road bikes. They don't particularly want some Formula One car on the road.
But it's like we said at the very beginning of this podcast with WEC, with the weight penalties, which way does it go? Because you don't want to cheese off the other manufacturers. In MotoGP world, Mike Trimby, he sadly passed away over the weekend as well.
Oh yes, character. I didn't know him. No, but a lot of nice stories.
Yeah, they say I read a bit about him just out of courtesy, really. But said he was a bit of a trailblazer. He set up in the early '80s the IRTA, which is the International Road Racing Teams Association. And he was 74, so it's sad to hear. Apparently a well-liked guy in the paddock. So our condolences there. What about World Superbikes, Tiff, in terms of Razgat?
Yeah, well, I didn't know much to race, but Toprak Razgatlioglu, 2 wins on his Yamaha, and Alvaro Bautista on the Ducati had 1. Razgatlioglu not giving up. It looked like Bautista would cruise away to a second title, but he's hauling him back. He's not giving it. I think there's 3 rounds still to go. They head sort of down into the south and southern hemisphere, I think, towards the end. Jonathan Ray had 3 third places. He's been in sort of third place for the last 3 years behind these other 2 or 2 years. So he was back with his steady turn. A lot of interesting, though, I think, this year is the same as it was last year. Really, it's the same 3 riders in the top 3 positions, but only really Bautista and Razgatlioglu who can win the title race a bit too far down. But Razgatlioglu already said he was going to BMW, which was interesting, leaving Yamaha. And Jonathan Ray, who's been Kawasaki for 9 years now, winning 6 titles, he's going to Yamaha, where Razgatlioglu is. So changes for next year. The World Superbike won't look the same. But that was that. British GT coming back home finally after our usual tour around the world that we like to do. Yeah, Darren Young and Dan Harper won with the BMW M4 in the British GT Championship, which means they can still, on points, overhaul the Mercedes of James Cottingham and Johnny Adam, who finished 3rd.
DK Engineering.
Yeah. So it's the Donington finale. Got to wait to the end of October to that. So there'll be a lot of nail biting by everyone down there. So I think Cottingham and Adam probably have to finish 3rd or maybe 4th, should be enough at Donington. But it's never easy to do that because it's very competitive. And they have these different, depending on the last weekend's results. I think Young and Harper will have to spend longer in the pits. They have a pit sort of penalty, which I think sort of works. So if you win a race, you have to spend another 10 seconds in the pits or 20 seconds in the pits on your driver change at the next round.
Oh, I'm not sure it does.
I know, but all the cars are balanced and powered, and it's very difficult to overtake some of these British tracks when these cars are so big and so similarly powered. I mean, so that's the way it is. But I don't think MotoGP ought to artificially slow anything. I think the top Formula One and MotoGP needs a set of rules they all follow. I think when you've got a manufacturer sort of style like the sports cars and like touring cars, maybe there's some way of you've got to keep everybody happy.
Yeah, fair enough. And what about Goodwood? Glorious Goodwood. How did you get on
That's
there?
why I don't know much this weekend, because I was just at glorious.
You had 3 races flat out, and you finished 2 out of the 3. Well, your car.
More importantly, look, I got bowled by Alex Brundle in the cricket, and it was an illegal ball. It came in towards my head. I tried to swat it. I mean, he bowled a scrubber down my right on the ground, a scrubber down my left on the ground, and he bowled this thing over my head. And I missed the swat, landed on the stumps. And the umpire, they all said out. And I went to go, I did all this, review. And apparently there was no review system available, which is outrageous.
It's the 25th year of the Goodwood Revival. If you've never been, you should go. And it's Tiff's 25th year of the Goodwood Revival.
25.
You're one of the very few that would have done every single year, if anyone
brings
at all.
A tear to my eye. When the Dukes created this, just amazing turn back in time, and everything inside the tracks 66 or before, everyone's wearing sort of 66 or earlier. There's rock and roll going, and there's parties and beer tents and champagne tents, and it's just 3 days
probably Goodwood, Festival Speed and the Revival are probably the best 2 motor shows in the world. I've been to them all, and they're something else. It's completely different.
All sorts of weather as well. I know you're exhausted. You idiot, climbing 4 mountains or 4 peaks. Stupid idea. But Goodwood on the Saturday, I was exhausted just waiting to go out of the cars. It was about 32 degrees, I think, around then. Humid.
When you got your race suits on, your Nomex and all that sort of, it's hot.
Yeah, I had 3 very different drives as well. On the first one was this Jowett Javelin, a 1953 thing with a flap 4 1.5 litre engine up in the front. A very slow
25 horsepower.
A very slow thing. Well, there were 3 slow cars at the back. There was a Ford Popular with Matt Neal in it, and I was quicker than him. And there was a DAF with young Brundle, with Alex Brundle in it. Yeah. I think it was Brundle. Was it Brundle? Yes, it was. Anyway, there's this poor old Joe. I had a lot of fun with it. It'd been driven by Christian Horner the previous year, so I was delighted to go 3 seconds quicker than Christian Horner in this poor little car. But in the race on the Saturday, the temperature started going up and up and up. And
so did you see it? Did you see the temperature?
Yeah, I was watching it come. So I came in on 110. And the owner, bless him, it's a wonderful team. Well, this is what Goodwood's all about. So Julian Crossley, I'll get on Twitter and tell you to listen to this podcast, because you and his boys were working on the car. He's built this car up over the years. He's been to Goodwood twice before. It's a classic Goodwood sort of adventure. They know they're not going to win because there's no classes. You can't win a class at Goodwood. You're either first or you're last. But it was fun to handle, beautifully presented, all the interior, the weldings and stuff. But I came in with 110 on the clock after about 4 laps. I mean, briefly, Dice led Rowan Atkinson in his Mark 1 Jag, Mark 7 Jag. So me and Rowan Atkinson, the biggest car in the race and the smallest car in the race, went through the chicane. I have a photo. I need a photo of that. And I said, well, it's 110. And he just said, well, we just want to finish, Tiff, go out and just treat it as... So I kept on going out, and I got it down to 90. I started coasting, knocking out of gear. I was surprised I haven't done that before. If you just trail brake in without declutching, the temperature, because obviously the engine is still under load. So about halfway through, I started coasting in, and that got the temperature down to about 95. And so I got the throttle, it was back to 105. And then I used half the revs. And I was being lapped by now by the leader. So I had to go looking glued to my mirror and waving people by. And all of a sudden, I knew it was trouble. About 2 laps from home, the temperature suddenly went down to 80.
Yeah.
And when that's happening, the water is now not going where it is going, where the oil is, and it's going all in the wrong directions. But on the last lap, having been in the pits, I suddenly saw the DAF up ahead of me, a Brundle. And it was the slowest car on the grid. And I thought, well, I must be at least a 1 more lap down on the DAF, because I've been in the pits. So I thought I'd just overtake it for the hell of it on the last lap. So I stormed past the DAF, little knowing I was taking last place off Brundle. That'll teach him. So we finished 21st. I think Brundle was 22nd in the DAF.
And you got to nurse it back in one.
No, because then literally on the slowing down lap, the smoke suddenly came out the back. The gasket blew. The water went in the engine. So, and of course, it's a 2-driver race. The owners race on the Sunday. Last race, in fact, it was yesterday. So the boys and Dad pulled all the cylinders off, and they showed me the gasket on Sunday morning, and all the glee of the joy. You know, to them, half the fun is breaking down and making it go again.
Love it.
They show me they're cracking the thing, and we've done this, we've done that, we've got a different gasket, and it's running. And then so I went out to watch the race just after I'd finished my last race in the Lister. And he went round to the formation lap and looked all right. He went round the end, coming round at the end of the first lap, all the leaders went through. I suddenly saw this smoky little machine out of the corner of my eye. So poor old, he just got one lap, Julian. And obviously the fix didn't work. But such a lovely, that's what Goodwood's all about. You know, it's not about the winning.
Brilliant.
But no, I loved the E-Type Jaguar drove, was having fun, and unfortunately the second gear stripped, but horrible noise coming out of the chicane. I'd done 4 laps.
How hard do you drive these old cars? You've got to.
But yeah, you're all on 95%. You don't hang around. You're all at them. And rather annoyingly, it rained in the second half of the race, and the E-Types were then overtaking the Cobras. I mean, the E-Types who used to win the TT, they're way. Now the Cobras have been able to raise the horsepower on those V8s more than you can raise a Jaguar engine, which is sort of much more limited in its 6-cylinder block. So I could have had a starring role catching up, but I didn't. I was in the pits. But the Lister was nice. It was all a bit stiff. I hadn't driven it before. It's not a very well-developed car. We haven't developed it. I mean, John Spears owns this car. But it was all greasy and dry. Sun was out, but the track was as slippy as ice.
Was it?
So the front brakes were locking up. There was
various oil
it seemed
and
too
stuff.
stiff. Yeah, well, no range. They had a big range in the TT. But it's the beautiful blue costing Nathan, one of the prettiest cars in the world. And funny enough, my first race, 25 years ago, the first Goodwood revival, I raced a Lister Nobly, Go Top Gear Tiff, Goodwood. It's one of my favourite films. It's on YouTube. We go look for it. And then my most recent drive after 25 years is a Lister for the costing. So a bit of bookending there. Not that it's the end.
I was going to say,
will be moving.
That's not the end. You've got a few years left in you yet, let's hope.
But I might not agree to do 3 races again. It was too hot.
Brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, so thank you. Thanks to the Duke for creating that amazing weekend, as ever.
And thanks to you all for listening for another week. We look forward to seeing you next week. What's on next week, Tiff? Sorry, that was
next week was just Formula 1 in Singapore, where there is news. I just realised they've taken 4 corners out. They might even, wait for this, have created an overtaking spot, which will make Singapore a better race, hopefully. I don't know, you never know, it's qualifying, so I don't know whether street course, whether Max they don't have quite such an advantage in the street course.
Well, the rumours are that Ferrari are going to do well here, and if any circuit at all, any race at all this season, Ferrari have got their best chance at Singapore to beat the 10.
NASCAR Bristol, as I said, the half-mile track. There'll be bumping and barging and drama in Bristol. Aussie supercars are somewhere, I'm not quite sure where. Imps have got their LMDHs, which they call P1s, whatever they call it. I always say that every year. They're off to the IndyCar road course for a round. Back home, British Superbikes, Alton Park. Now, if you're up north or even you're down south, round that track,
amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
British Superbikes, Alton Park. And if you happen to be on a beach in Sardinia, apparently there are some beach buggies racing in a field somewhere. Except you can't go watch them. You're not a spectator. You have to go on a television to watch the extreme.
I've got to say, they do pick some good spots, but
yeah. They did put spectators somewhere, like South America, but in general, no spectators.
Good.
I mean, nobody reads about Extreme. It's bizarre. Now it's new.
They can listen to it here. They got Extreme Hydrogen as well coming. We'll give you the results with vested interest next week. Look forward to it.
Very good. And I can tell you next week about going to meet Thierry Boutsen, and I'm driving a Jaguar XJ220 down in Monaco for this Kahuna company I'm doing some videos for. I'm sorry, Paul. I mean, I love obviously I'm number one. I love cars. Obviously, love cars number one. But I'm quite looking forward to that.
That sounds nice.
A car dealer. I'm not sure I'm that looking forward to an XJ220 around Monaco because they are the longest, widest things in the world. But a little trip.
Good stuff.
And next weekend, Friday night football, Southampton. Let's get back to the football. And I'll see you Monday.
Look forward to it. Thanks for joining. See you next week.
Cheers, Paul.
Bye.